And it's a constant decision that you have to make to be like, no, my truth and my light deserves to shine here. I deserve to be free here.
Talking about your life purpose, what do you feel like that is now?
It's really just uplifting those that have been put down. It's really giving voice to those that have been silent. It's loving those who feel unloved and giving community to those who feel isolated and alone. So many of us go against hardships, just being born the way that we are, loving the people that we love, looking the way that we look, and that's not fair. There is a string so clearly connected between homophobia and racism and sexism and all these things, and it's the idea that someone can be considered less than just because of how they were born and who they are. And that's my life purpose, to combat that, to fight against that.
We're not only healing ourselves, we're healing generations, because we're helping to heal the generations that are coming after us and the ones that came before, because there's a ripple effect.
You don't get told kind of the other side of things, the other side of like what we're still fighting for. The message is always just how far we've come and not really how far we need to go.
Welcome to this episode of Rooted Recovery Stories. I'm Patrick Custer, and literally so excited to be here today. This interview has been such a long time coming. Very, very special guest and friend all the way from Los Angeles. I got to read my cards when I'm doing this introduction, because his accolades, and I'm not even going to be able to get to all of them, are so impressive and so meaningful. Former NFL player for the Dallas Cowboys and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, celebrated author, published poet, equality advocate, and last but not least, Emmy nominated for his documentary, Finding Free, R.K. Russell.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited you're here today.
Me too. It's been, like you said, a long time coming, and I love Nashville, so I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been a treat to get to have you here a little longer than just the actual podcast. For me, it was special getting to watch the Super Bowl with you yesterday. First for me, I've never gotten to sit down and watch the Super Bowl with an actual NFL player. And
it was a good one. It was like very close, very a little too close for my comfort, and we had good food, great company. So that's what football is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your favorite part about the game?
Other than Usher, my favorite part about the game, that no one got too badly injured. I know we had I think one or two guys go down, but I hate seeing a guy carted off of a big game like that. Mm-hmm. You spend your whole life dedicated to something, you get to this big moment, and then it's kind of taken away. So that was a huge plus. Also just seeing Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs create a dynasty right before our eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 Super Bowl back-to-back wins. 3 in the last 5 years. We're really seeing the beginning of a quarterback that potentially chased a Tom Brady, which is super exciting, especially so recently after Tom Brady retired, already having this amazing talent kind of emerge. It was cool seeing all the celebrities there also. Beyonce dropped some new songs.
Right.
Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are living all of our showman's fantasy. It was a good one. It was a really good one.
It was. I felt like that I think once the numbers are released, I think we're going to find out that was probably the most watched Super Bowl in our lifetime. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
At least so far. All right, now down to you. I want to talk about something that people either, if they don't know about you yet, this is something that is a huge part of your life. And if they do know about you, it's been so big in the media over the past few years. But that you came out, you were the first person to come out as an active player in the NFL as bisexual. Did you know that it was going to be something that followed you, that was going to be such a theme of your life and blow up like it did for literally years now?
Definitely not, I think, the way that it has. I knew that being the first to do anything comes with certain type of responsibility, certain types of pressure, certain types focus and spotlight, both positive and negative. So I knew that the moment would be big. Mm. I didn't know kind of the ripple effect that it would have, not just in sport and in pop culture, but in my own personal life. I mean, I was not only able to have this amazing pure moment for me and myself, but also it allowed me to achieve dreams that I never thought I would achieve, to be in places and meet people and have amazing conversations with people that inspire me, people that motivate me, people that I look up to still to this day. So I definitely knew it would be a big moment. I knew my life would change somewhat, but I didn't know that it would really set me up to finding my life purpose, to finding true love, not just romantically, but in friendships and platonically as well. And to hopefully make my mark on this world, which is just leaving it a better place than I found it.
Beautiful. Talking about your life purpose, what do you feel like, if you could narrow that down into
Oh my gosh.
what do you feel like that is now?
I mean, it's simple. It's really just uplifting those that have been put down. It's really giving voice to those that have been silent. It's loving those who feel unloved and giving community to those who feel isolated and alone. So many of us, for various reasons, go against hardships, just being born the way that we are, loving the people that we love, looking the way that we look, being the certain color that we are. And that's not fair. There is a string so clearly connected between homophobia and racism and sexism and all these things. And it's the idea that someone can be considered less than just because of how they were born and who they are. And that's my life purpose, to combat that, to fight against that. That's why I don't specify normally what type of quote unquote advocate I am, because I'm an advocate for all people. I'm an advocate for equality and inclusion for all of us, because if it's not for all of us, then that's not what it is. There are ways to do that that don't sound as heavy as the description that I just gave. And there are ways to do that where you really have to do the work, where you really have to have the hard conversations, where you have to be in the streets talking about policy and talking about politics and talking about a group collective consciousness, which is really important. And then there are fun ways to do it. There are ways where you can write books, where you can make shows, where you can tell stories, where you can show different types of people who haven't been shown before, having fun and living life and loving life. And that in its own way is advocacy. That in its own way is giving voice to the voiceless and light to those who feel shrouded in darkness just for purely existing.
That's so good. You just answered my next list of 5 questions that I had, all talking about equality, because it's something that is, I think, so much of the time we, those of us that are doing our what we're trying to do, fighting for equality, get kind of pulled or pigeonholed into one specific area of it. And I think that you hit the nail on the head. Equality, if we really believe in it, doesn't mean that we're fighting for one. It's all connected. Okay, so you have a platform. Obviously, you're using it for good. If you were to give advice for somebody like a layperson, how do you approach fighting for equality for all? What does that look like?
No, I love that. I think in the age of social media, we think that to make an impact, it has to be like this really big thing. Like it has to be, if I post a video about, voting rights for everyone, that it has to be my 1 million view video and all this. And yeah, that's great. But that's not the only thing that matters. That what matters is, like you said, using your power, using your freedom, using your choice, whether that be in local election, whether that be getting involved in your community locally, whether it be finding organizations and nonprofits that align with values of equality and inclusion, whether that be LGBTQ plus nonprofits, those for women, those for people of color, those for people from displaced backgrounds, all of these things. I think we get caught up in the size of something instead of actually just doing the work and doing it consistently. Honestly, I would give the advice for anyone to start locally. See what's impacting your local community, see what's impacting the people in your neighborhood that feel displaced or oppressed or systemically discriminated against, and start there, because one, that's going to be where you see like the most benefit in the day-to-day life outside of the telephone screens and the likes and the views and the shares. And I honestly feel that's where you're going to feel also kind of the most instant like reward, because you're going to see people that you see every day and know, feeling you fighting for them and feeling like they're not alone, and see how that changes their life and in turn changes yours. Absolutely.
Well, and we were talking about yesterday how much of a difference it makes, no matter what you're fighting for, no matter what state you're in. So many states have more liberties for people than others, and I'll mention our state, for example, the importance that someone like me and my other LGBTQ plus friends and colleagues, many of them have felt unsafe to stay in Tennessee and have moved away. Those, though, such as myself and others that have felt a calling to stay here and feel safe enough to stay here and fight the good fight while we can. To do that, I think absolutely we have a mantle of responsibility, I think, to do all the things you just said, stay educated. And I mean, heck, I'm a 37-year-old man, and I just started realizing the importance of local elections and how much they have the power over, I mean, literally our liberties and things. I think, I don't know about you, but growing up, and this is probably my privilege showing. Growing up, I think that I thought progression was one way. I didn't think we would or could go backwards. I didn't think we would see that in our lifetime.
Yeah, I know. I think it's a wake up call. I think it's also just it's a maturity thing. Like, we're young. We're just in this new age where everything seems, we're told how much better things are than they were, whether that be accurately shown to us or not. But you're taught in school that, like, even things about racism, that was at this time and slavery was then, and we had all these accomplishments and made all these new laws and things are better. And yes, they definitely are better, but you don't get told kind of the other side of things. You don't get told, especially in school or in organized education, that the other side of, like, what we're still fighting for. The message is always just how far we've come and not really how far we need to go. So I mean, whether you're introduced to that at what time and point of your life, I think privilege and things then come into place for that. But I really believe that all young people were kind of all told, like, life is so great. You have it so good. Things are so much better. And we do, but we also need to be educated on what's to come next, what we're still fighting for, and what's going to affect not just us, but, you know, our brothers, our friends, our sisters, our community, the people with us. That collective consciousness is super important.
So true. Speaking about a community, collective consciousness, and youngsters, family units, all those things, I want to take it back a little bit to when you were a kid and your family life, and what framed and shaped your existence and your outlook on the world. My gosh, thinking back to, like, your earliest memory to describe your life at that, when you can remember having an assessment of your life, how would you describe it through that little child's eyes?
Oh my gosh, I was born in Buffalo, New York, so the first thing that pops in my mind is cold. I would describe my childhood as lots of blizzards.
With fond memory?
Lots of snow days. Like, when you're young, the snow is so great. Now I literally run from it. But no, I will say that there are some visceral memories from my younger years. I lost my stepfather, who was helping raise me when I was 6. And I kind of remember that experience as only a 6-year-old could. You know, I mean, I didn't have really a concept of what death was. I didn't really understand grief. Those were things that would come to me later, and I would have to deal with and unpack. But it really set up in my life this relationship that I had with my mother. My mother to this day is my best friend. We talk pretty much every day, definitely every weekday for at least an hour. I give her the weekends off to live her life. But for a lot of the time, it felt like just her and me. And I had other people in my family, like, step up and, you know, help me. But the day to day, it was really just me and my mom. She had me very young. She had me when she was 20. So I think about my life when I was 20 and what it would have been like raising a kid.
Right.
And I'm, like, even more mind blown at the amazing woman that she was and still is. And honestly, regardless of the things that we did or didn't have, I had so much love in this person that took care of me, that I would describe my childhood as, like, happy. Like, I was a really happy kid. I was a little soft spoken, like, I was very much an observant child before I said or acted. But I knew that I was loved. I had a bunch of fun growing up. It was just the isolation that would soon start to kind of, like, seep in, of being, like, the only child with a mother. We moved to Texas when I was 7. And that's when I kind of first started really encountering things like racism and feeling any type of, like, otherness. So all these things will come into play later. But I would say I was so fortunate to have, like, a great foundation and just a great mom who really cared and loved for me. And our relationship is even greater and stronger today, which is awesome.
Beautiful. I think about that because I have a really great relationship with my mom too. And I'm like, that's so special that you talk to her an hour that's awesome.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Man, we talk so much about on this show because, you know, one of our main themes is really focusing on the storms of people's lives and their unique struggle, what they overcame, how they overcame it. And we talk very, very much about isolation because it's usually a main theme in the storms. So I know you kind of touched on that, but let's dive a little bit deeper. And, when you moved to Texas, what did that look like for you? How did it feel? And how did it develop as you aged through?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first, got there, you don't know what to expect. My vision of Texas was like tumbleweeds and cowboys and, all of these things that I saw in like cartoons. And it was not that, spoiler alert. But also, you don't know what you don't know, right? So as a kid, you're mostly surrounded by like family. Even the people in my community at that time in school, they looked like me. We all kind of had a common understanding or basis for that. Moving to Texas was the first time where I was really put in like mass schools and mass situations where I was one of a handful of Black kids. Also being
a handful, not just in your class, your whole school.
Oh yeah, in my school. Yes.
Wow.
Or being one of a handful of kids who came from like a single parent. Texas also is very, I say that Texas lives by the 3 F's, which is faith, family, and football. And, I was too young to play football. That comes in later in my life. Faith was like one of those things that oftentimes I felt like instead of being used as a tool to like invite me in, was used as kind of like a warning sign against me of like, oh, you can't really play with our kids or like be in our house or trust you because you don't share the same faith that we share, which wasn't really a choice. I was born to a single mother who worked 2-3 jobs to provide for me. Like we literally really didn't have time to go to church.
Yeah.
I know people make time and great for them, but we just had different priorities.
Yeah.
So that was kind of hard for me growing up. And as you get older, the excuses, especially as a person of color, you are looked at in more adult ways very early on. So instead of being kind of like a 13-year-old boy, I'm now looked at as kind of a threat or an opposition in some way, in some sense. You see it and you feel it inherently growing up, feeling unsafe, feeling like in some way you're an adversary to something and you don't really know what that something is. I remember walking home before curfew, because there were times where we had curfews in Texas. I don't know if they have them here, but police would come up and I would hear on the intercom, a description of a young man that was nothing like me, other than skin color, like not wearing the same clothes or whatever, and they would just talk to me. I'm very polite. I didn't mind it, but that happened so commonly to people like me, to my Black friends, not to my white friends. It was certain times where I was like, hey, can you take me home? Like, I am walking. Like, if you're worried about me being out here, drive me to my house. You'll see I'm not doing anything. But it was the constant monitorization, the constant surveillance of me as a young Black man that really messed with me later in life.
Sure.
And then, of course, I encountered more obvious forms of racism, hate, prejudice, discrimination, outside of like these microaggressions that I really grew up with as a young person.
As for somebody who did not grow up that way, my mind continues to get blown as I hear more stories and try to educate myself on these, other people's lived experiences about exactly what you're talking about. Growing up, being taught racism was one thing and not like we moved out from it and here's the progress and all these things. But there's so many other ways that we now know about the microaggressions that are actually micro traumas as well, or also calls micro traumas, or maybe they're large traumas, but they equate to a large trauma, builds up in your body and absolutely affects you for a long time, if not forever. Man.
This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admission center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.
So with that going on, experiencing those forms of isolation, what for you were your main like role models that you looked to for what you wanted to be like or achieve, or what you thought you could be like and achieve?
Yeah, I think that's really where football comes into play in my story. I was a big kid. Not always. Like once I hit teenage years, once you start kind of getting into puberty and coming out, I just sprouted. I wouldn't even say I was like big, like strong, but just like a tall, lanky kid.
How tall are you right now?
6'5".
Okay.
So I was
for the audio listeners. Yeah, you're it makes sense.
Yes. So I sprouted up in high school. I think it's the same way here. I think it's most like southern states. In high school, football is also a class. Like you can put it on your schedule, you can go, and then you have practice also after school. So it's like a long period of just training. And I remember coaches following me like from class to class, like trying to see where I was going, like who I was, talk to my teachers about me, see if I was a good kid. And then finally a coach approached me and asked me if I would like to try football, like why football wasn't on my schedule. And I never really thought about it. My family loves football so much. I was familiar with it, but also growing up in Buffalo, there's a lot of trauma around football in the Super Bowls they lost and all these things. So there was a lot of that, but I just never really thought about it. Then I remember kind of asking my mom. We were in a situation where she had a better job. She wasn't working 2 to 3 at this time. She was like, if you really want to go for it, go for it. And I just remember getting that jersey and getting that helmet and being on the field with guys that looked like me, guys that didn't look like me, guys I hadn't talked to ever, and feeling instantly connected, feeling instantly a part of something larger than me. And it was also one of the first times after my father passed that I had male role models and figures in my life as coaches who really cared about my development, yes, as a player, but also as a young man. Because a lot of, football, especially at that high school level, I just praise God for any high school coach that's doing it right. A lot of it is like helping raise young men and helping kids stay out of trouble, and helping kids like get at least good enough grades that they can play, but hopefully as good of grades as they're capable of, because that's really, what education at that level is all about, just doing the best of your capability. So I had that. And regardless of whether I was good or not, fortunately, I was talented. I just remember instantly feeling welcomed into something, and you don't really realize how isolating and alone your life feels until you feel that like other side. Coming from Buffalo, I was so young, I don't even think I grasped kind of the shift, not consciously anyway. But then when things shifted back and I felt then a part of this huge, powerful thing. And you got to remember, football in Texas, it wasn't just like my school embraced me. It was like a city embraced me. You know what I mean? It's such a large thing there. And I was just like, I love this. I want this forever. I'm going to hold on to this. I then at that point, football became like number one in my life. And, that would cause issues down the line. But at those younger years, I was like, I love this.
Yeah, of course. Makes all the sense in the world. So what grade was that you started football?
Oh my gosh. I started in high school. So I think I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay. And then played all the way up through, well, obviously for years and years.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, like what were some of the highlights for kind of what led to one thing after the next?
Yeah. For me, honestly, it was getting a scholarship was like the first huge life accomplishment via football, especially because college was one of those things. Like my mom always preached education. She is first generation on her mother's side. My grandma immigrated from Jamaica here to give her family a better life, which she did. Another amazing just matriarch of our family. And my mom got a master's degree while raising me in criminal justice, with a specialty in like juvenile criminal justice. So my mom was also very keyed into like the specific traumas and systems and hurdles of like young men of color because of her education. Right. And she always knew that even if I were to go to college and give it a shot, that my statistical chances of then not being, put in the criminal justice system or juvenile criminal justice system, not being incarcerated anyway, would skyrocket my chances of a better life would then multiply fourfold. So she always preached education to me. Also, as I said earlier in this podcast, we didn't have a lot of money, so I wasn't sure how that would look. In my mind, I formulated get a scholarship or go to community college and hopefully transfer into a bigger school or go to the Army. Those were kind of my options. So when I started playing, started having success and school started coming and saying things like full ride scholarship, I was just mind blown. It was also my mother's want for education for me also factored into my decision, and which is why I did end up going to Purdue University, because it was a school that played in a Big Ten conference. So it's whether you know Purdue or not, you've heard of the Ohio State and Michigan and kind of these powerhouse schools. So I would have the opportunity to play against them. But also Purdue was one of the most successful public schools at that time in terms of education. So it was kind of the best of both worlds for me. So that was kind of the big first accomplishment that football gave me. And even if that would have been the last, that would have made me so indebted to the sport. Because on the other end of that, it's the friendships I was making along the way, especially when I got in college. Because, you step out from under kind of the shelter of your family and the identity that your family and that your hometown has kind of crafted for you. And you get to become your own person. And since you kind of get to start over as a young adult, you're if I want to be the loud kid, I can. If I want to be this kid, I can. So we're all finding ourselves, hopefully trying to find our truer selves. And you're making these connections that last forever. And that's where I met my best friend, Joseph Gilliam, at the time, who really played a significant part of my life.
That's awesome. So going through that period of time, all the way through college, playing football for them, what would you say, did anything change for you as far as academically goals for your profession? I mean, was it always just I don't know what's next, but I hope that this just doesn't stop?
I think as a young person who experienced so much grief and kind of trauma, it is a sense of what's next. It is a sense of I'm going to go where I'm welcomed and where I'm accepted and where it feels real to me. I didn't really even think of the NFL until a college coach told me, scouts are here looking for you. This is a real thing for you. I was just happy to be at a place where I didn't have student debt. I was getting an education. I was alive. I wasn't in prison. And that sounds very dramatic, but really that's always in the back of my mind of just, I don't want to be the statistic of the young Black boy from the single parent home, following this type of path or this type of life. So that all came to me, I feel very late. It came to me when people kind of told me, hey, it's okay to dream. It's okay to have these goals. Career-wise, I don't know what I was thinking. I'll be completely honest. I had so many careers as a young kid that I thought were cool or interesting. Then you get to college and you kind of see what that curriculum looks like, and you're I can't do that. Or I don't want to learn calculus, or all these crazy things. Then you have football, which does take up a lot of time. You can't take certain classes in college because of your sport.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, in football, we only could take early morning classes because we had late night practices and workouts. And, some classes or some courses to advance require internships in the summer or just different, different types of requirements, essentially, that football directly conflicts with. And now looking back, if my kid wanted to do something like that, I'd be there's a way to do it. But when I was in it, I was well, my coach told me I couldn't do this. Right. I'm not going to do this.
What did you end up majoring in?
I majored in sociology, and then I double majored in communications because I stayed every summer to practice football.
That's awesome. And I mean, what a great thing for you to have majored in communications, because look what you're doing now.
It all worked out.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, it was the career part. I was I'm here. I test well. That's another thing. I understand now as an adult that school is not a place where everyone thrives and is not a direct reflection of your knowledge, your education, your IQ, or your ability to learn even. It's a very specific, standardized way of like testing and learning that everyone just doesn't thrive in. I was fortunate enough where the system just fit my brain, and I was like, oh, I like do school well, which helped and hurt me because then I didn't take it as seriously. But the college part, I was like, I'll be okay. I was like, oh, I had a moment freshman year where I was on academic probation, but that was because I wasn't going to class because it was -5 degrees outside. No one told me Indiana would be as cold as it was. I probably should have known as like a young person going to college. But yeah, so that was a whole different kind of experience.
Oh, -5. I'm trying to think back to when I was in college. If that would have definitely been an obstacle for me to.
Well, I was just like, I know they're canceling class. Like in my mind, I was in my bed. I look at my phone. I'm like -5. They're canceling class. Little did I know Purdue, I think, hadn't canceled class for like half a century, like something crazy.
Oh, wow.
They had like some wild stat about not canceling classes that sounded crazy to me. I'm like, this is masochistic. You should just cancel class. It's not that serious. So all that was happening, my education, my football, kind of realizing this NFL dream. And then, of course, in normal, just like crazy life fashion, my sexuality also then came up in a way where I was like, oh, shoot, I guess I'm kind of not straight, but like, I don't know what that means. And I identify as bisexual now. So now I have all of the terminology and all the knowledge.
Sure.
But bisexuality at that time to me was presented as like a transitional thing. Like you're straight, then you kind of go down like gay street and you're like bi for a little bit until you get to like gay town, and then you're gay, and then there's no,
right.
Like that's just is what it is. And like I said, even saying it out loud, it sounds crazy. But as a young person, I'm really like, oh my God, this is happening to me. There's both this temptation to understand yourself and discover this part of yourself, because that's what you're told college is all about, like finding out who you are and who you want to be. And then there's, of course, the very real fear that in that discovery, you will find different limitations. You will find different adversaries. You will find different really harms to you in your dreams and in your well-being. So part of me in college was like, well, if I am bi or if I am gay, let me just like stop. Let me just like go back.
Right.
So that was a lot of a struggle for me in college. I was also fortunate enough, like I said, like I mentioned earlier, to make a best friend like Joe Gilliam, who was my roommate, was my teammate as well. We both played defense together, and was till this day one of the greatest men that I've ever had the chance of meeting, in terms of just integrity and being genuine and being a man of his word and judging people based solely off their actions. And he was the first person I say like came out to, but it was kind of like a soft coming out of like, I'm not straight and I don't know what that means for us.
Right.
But here it kind of is. And, he gave just the response that I think anyone wants to hear. It's just like, it doesn't change anything. I love you. I respect you. And as long as we continue to do right by each other, we continue to be friends, which was beautiful.
Yeah. It's special when you, the first person you share your truth with like that, it's so well received in a loving manner.
Yeah. And he embodied for me these communities that, from the limited education of LGBTQ plus that I had, he embodied all the communities that I was told or taught wouldn't accept me. He's a football player. He was a black man. He was, a straight person. He was also devoutly Christian, like grew up in the church. His dad was in the church. His granddad was in, like he kind of was all the fake red flags for me as a queer person. And with zero hesitation, accepted and loved me. And I can honestly say nothing changed from that point on. If it did, we just felt closer and things just got better. But at no point did I ever think that he harbored any resentment or any internalized conflict or anything like that, which is beautiful.
It sure is. But and we're talking about this is college, so you hadn't even gotten drafted yet.
No.
And we had some years between that and you actually embracing and coming out with your fully with your sexual orientation. So what happened next with so graduation? How does drafting happen? Because I'm not quite well versed with all the things football. So does you graduate first and then get drafted? Do you draft before? What?
Oh my gosh, it's different for different guys because college is one of those things where you can graduate early, you can graduate late. Some guys don't graduate at all, and then they go back maybe, or they do just online summer courses. So it's different. It is different for everyone. Okay. It's also you can not get drafted. You could be a free agent and then get a call later and show up to training camp or just show up to tryouts. The NFL is kind of this constantly evolving, changing thing, which is the beauty of it, but also what makes it terrifying. For me, in a sense, I graduated early because I knew that I wanted to graduate in December, January, right before the new year, because the draft was in April, I believe it was April, May, one of those. And I didn't want to have to wrap up school and also get ready to go chase the biggest dream of my life. So I graduated early. I graduated in 2024. I got drafted in 2015 to the Dallas Cowboys, the 5th round. And I was kind of it was the hometown hero story. You go back to where I found football and where I grew up, and you're a part of one of, if not the biggest, most well-known franchise in football.
Yeah.
And it was this beautiful, surreal moment, but also it was a moment that everything leading up to that, in terms of my sexuality and my identity, I had kind of put that on the back burner for football.
Yeah.
And then when you get the call, to me as a young person, that was validation. I was I made the right decision not coming out. I made the right decision not fully identifying or discovering or figuring this out, because look at what I have now. Mm-hmm. Look at where I am now. So,
and at that time, those were mutually exclusive things. You could not have both worlds at the same.
No, I didn't believe that I could. Like I said, honestly, after I told my best friend Joe, I told no one else.
Yeah.
I was just cool, we're good. I feel great with this. Let's just continue on with life. I got in a relationship with a woman after that as well. That was very much, positive in going in what I thought would be a long-term partnership. But I will say that before I was drafted in 2015, and the 2014 draft is the Michael Sam draft. And for those of you who aren't aware of Michael Sam was the first openly gay player to be drafted into the NFL. He went to Missouri. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, which is a huge award. You don't get that award without being a complete stud in defense. But he was also drafted in the 7th round, which is the last round of the NFL draft. He went to the St. Louis Rams, at that time, the St. Louis Rams. And I remember him being drafted in what I felt from his tape was very late. And, it was still a moment of celebration. He was with his partner, his then partner, and family and friends, it seemed like. And I remember they kissed when he got drafted. And that kiss was topic of discussion for days on days, played every hour on the hour on sports channels, was played in lead up to his training camp debut, his preseason debut, and just was such a, I don't even know how to, such a chaotic coverage of what would have been a sweet moment between anybody else. You see players get drafted all the time and kiss loved ones and hug and cry. And for him, it just became this huge distraction, I guess, from what was actually happening there, which a young man was achieving his dream that he'd worked for so long. Long story short, Michael Sam plays in preseason, doesn't get to make it to the active team roster, and doesn't really get many other chances or opportunities. I'm not him. I wasn't in those locker rooms. I don't know what exactly played out or why that exactly happened. But I do know from my point of view that in 2015, going into the draft, it was kind of the validation that I shouldn't come out. He was a great college player.
Yep.
You know, I was great too, but I'm like, I didn't win SEC Defensive Player of the Year. So like, if he can't make it work for him, I'm not going to risk it for me. I'm going to try to get some years, gain some credibility, live my football dream. I also know that football is like a short time in my life. And then after football, I'll just kind of like see what happens.
Yeah. So you played football. You were living your dream, played for Dallas Cowboys. Then you got drafted to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What happened towards the end when it all kind of came to a halt?
Yeah. So the funny thing about living your dream is if you're not living your dream as you, then it's not your dream. And I was living the dream that I thought other people would accept, that I thought the NFL would accept or fans would accept, you know, to even some level, my teammates, friends, family. I was living the dream that society told me I should be living. And it wasn't congruent with my soul and who I was, and I wasn't in alignment. So even in my great successes, though I had joy, though I experienced love, though I experienced celebration and these very heightened positive emotions, they were always kind of dim and dampered to the fact that I felt removed. I felt isolated again from people because people didn't really know me and know this part of me. And to take that to another level, it was the thought that if they did know this part of me, they would instantly not love me in the same way or not be in relation to me in the same way. But in 2017, I was starting for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I was playing quite well. It was a year that was make or break for me in terms of being a contract year, in terms of like, if I ball out now, I get the big deal afterwards and I'll be, you know, I can like finally set roots somewhere. 2017, prior to that season, was also the year that my best friend, Joe Gilliam, who I've talked about a few times now, found out that he had cancer. And I was with him when he found out. He first started having issues with feeling in his leg that then quickly moved to his other leg that then quickly, and I'm talking within days, moved to kind of like his lower abdomen. And I was with him when he was admitted to the hospital. You know, I stayed with him as long as I could till football I had to go back to my football obligations. Then I sent my mom to stay with him. He also had family, of course, coming to visit and friends. And we found out that he had stage 4 spinal glioblastoma, I believe is how you pronounce it. You know, a rare form of cancer where the first tumor was at the base of his spine and was growing and crushing his spine, which is why he was losing so much feeling. So there's a lot of pressure on me mentally going into this season.
Absolutely.
You know, my best friend, the only person who knows I'm out, is going through this. I have this big year coming up. It's Thursday night football against the New England Patriots. Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. I'm sorry, the Tom Brady comes first.
Right.
Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. It's the first half. I'm getting close. I'm touching Tom Brady. I'm hitting him. You know, we're making some plays. We're in the fight. It's a super close game. I don't remember the exact score. I remember it's kind of the 2-minute drill leading into the second half. Tom Brady's got the ball. So, I mean, him in 2 minutes is like 2 years. Like, he's deadly. And I just know, like, I got to get this guy down. I got to get this sack. I got to hit him. I'm getting close, but like, something's off. He just, you know, he's Tom Brady. He knows when to throw it. He feels you coming. He knows just how to move his body, regardless of how you feel about his athleticism. He's a crafty guy in the pocket. So one time I'm going by him. I'm so close. I just reach out my left arm. I'm like, I got to just try. And I kind of get pulled by him and I'm holding on to him. So my left shoulder, like, I feel something happen. And it hurts. You know, I take a second, I go to the sideline. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. My left arm's just really, it's not feeling great. So they put like a soft brace on me and I go back in. This is, I think, 40 seconds left of the half. They're getting close. I'm in. We have a blitz called, not to bore anyone that's not a football person. But long story short, I'm going to get Tom Brady unless the running back to my side runs out of the backfield for a route, essentially goes out for a pass. If that happens, I have to run with him and cover him. make sure he doesn't get the pass. Tom Brady, of course, being Tom Brady, knows this. In all of these people, I would be the mismatch going on this guy. But, you know, I'm an athlete. I'm like, I ran fast. So it happens. The play happens. He says, he snaps the ball. I go, the running back takes off. I run with him. He's running a wheel route, which essentially means we start from wherever the heck we start and run all the way up the sideline. He's trying to score a touchdown on me. The safety is supposed to also know this and come over and help me. The safety's on defense with me. I'm running with this guy. I'm in a great spot. Like, I got the clip. There's no lies. Great spot. Anyone else probably wouldn't throw it. I just remember looking in this man's eyes as we're running together, and his eyes kind of get big, and he looks up, and I'm like, oh shit, the ball's coming. Here it comes. I reach out that same left arm because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to look back. As soon as you look back, you see it happen on TV all the time. And unless you're like a bona fide speed monster, if you're in a trail on some guy and the ball's in there, don't look back because your body, you're going to slow. You're going to slow down. Like, whether you know to or not, you're going to slow down. If you don't slow down and he does, you're going to run into him, and that's a flag. So I don't know why. I don't know if they don't teach that to people in college now, but like, don't look back. Play the guy, play the hands, play the ball once it's there, knock it out of his hands. So that's what I'm trying to do. I see him go for the catch. I put out my left arm to bat it down. The safety's also coming down, like crashing on us now because he's a little late. No offense to him. He's doing his job. I just remember going to swipe the ball, holding on to the guy, making contact, having my left arm, the one that I already messed up, outstretched, hitting the ground with my left arm out, rolling like over my left arm, hearing like snap, crackle, pop, all of the things. It sounds like jeans, like tearing, like denim jeans ripping, if you can imagine what that sounds like. So it's a bang, bang play. That happens. I then am like on my knees looking at my left arm and like willing it to move, and it's not moving. It's like also somehow like an inch longer than it was before.
Oh man.
So at this time, I'm like, I've seen football movies. Like, my shoulder's dislocated. Like, it is what it is. In that moment, you know, Thursday Night Football, like I said, this is a huge year. There's a lot of pressure. I'm like, I seen football movies. The shoulder comes out. You just put it back in. So I grab my left arm with my right hand.
Oh God.
And I'm just like, I'm just going to shove it up. It'll go back in and it'll be great. So my shoulder was like dislocated frontwards. I went to go jam it back in, and then it slid and dislocated backwards, basically. And you just kind of hear like this. I don't know how to explain it other than, I don't know. Have you ever, probably not, people aren't weird like me, but like two like stones or something like grinding together.
Yeah.
Like, is this ASMR? Grinding together like this.
Yeah.
Is what I hear like as my shoulder like relocates and like dislocates out the back of my arm. And then at that point, that's when like the pain kicks in.
Oh.
And I'm like, this sucks. And I'm like yelling, and they take me to the sideline. They have to take me to the locker room. They do an MRI. Obviously, everything's terrible. And of course, as you hear in any football story where the player gets injured, I ask the question of, did he catch the ball? I'm like, did he catch it? Of course, to make things worse, he caught the ball.
Oh, man.
They set up a score. They score before the half. I don't go back in the game. Tom Brady, they win the game. It's just like the worst thing that happened. But that is kind of like the pinnacle of that season, where then now I played the rest of the season with this horrific shoulder injury. I get to the end of the season, which I did actually very well for someone that was hurt. We didn't make the playoffs. Our coaching staff was also about to be shuffled. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers bring me in and they tell me, like, we appreciate your sacrifice. We know that you played injured. You gave us your heart. A bunch of catastrophic things happened that season. They were like, you know, there's no question of like whether you can play in this league or of your character. The only question is if you'll be able to recover from this injury and still play at that level. So with that happening, we cannot sign you to a new deal because we just don't know what your future is going to be like. So I walked away with a shoulder that was worse than when I injured it. No football team. I go then to be with my best friend who had been battling stage 4 cancer for this time. You know, and rehabbing. I'm like, he's He's working on his health. I'm working on my health. We're in this together. But life doesn't always work out that way. In 2018, after a year of his diagnosis, my best friend Joe Gilliam passes away, and I'm in a position where football has been taken away from me. My shoulder takes over a year to heal at this time. My best friend has passed away, who was kind of this connection between my football world and my personal world, and that's gone. And I just remember thinking, like, these days just keep coming. I'm like, no, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I want to just be in bed, but like, time is not stopping. Nothing is stopping. And everyone understands to a point. Everyone gives you space and allows you to grieve to a point. But there's a time in your life where people will expect you to be the person that you are to them again. People will expect you to be the brother to them again, the best friend to them again, the son or the coworker or the teammate. And you have to come to a realization is like, what is it going to take to be that person? How is that person going to be different? Because you're never going to be the same. And it's my first brush with death in a way where my eyes were unveiled to kind of the harshness of life in a different way. This wasn't racism or homophobia. This wasn't a bad game or being injured. This was a loss that I would never feel again. This was a person that was gone that will never be back here in this way. And you're given like, this is what life is. You've experienced love and all these highs. You've had the dream. You've also experienced loss and death and hate. And this is what it is. And this isn't going to change. You're going to continue to experience all these things. What do you want to do? And there was a decision, I talk about in my book where a lot of people, especially from oppressed communities, from who embody an intersection of oppressed and marginalized communities and voices like myself, have to decide if this is the life that we want to live or if this isn't the life we want to live, whatever that looks like for you. Mm-hmm. And for me, I didn't want to live that life, but I also didn't want to not live that life. So I went about it the wrong way at first. I had always been a drinker at the time, but had started really, I didn't have the excuse of, I gotta wait for practice. I didn't have the excuse of, I got a game. I gotta go for the season. I could just drink, just to drink. So that became super harmful to me. But on the positive side of it, I also didn't have the football excuse of not telling people that I met about myself and about my sexuality and my identity. I was no longer really super afraid that would get back to my team and that I'd be kicked out. So there were definitely two things at play. But those were kind of the major catalysts that made me look at my life and be like, this is what life is. So what are we about to make of it? Mm-hmm. Are we about to tap out? Are we about to say, this isn't what I want, take me out of this? Are we going to just go through it as a zombie, which I did a lot of days as well? Or are we going to try to really make something of this?
Oh, that's a big fork in the road.
Yeah.
How'd you make that decision?
Oh my God. I think it's a decision I have to make every day, honestly. It's because the thing with the fork in the road is, there's still not just two clear paths. Mm-hmm. You can always go back over to the side. You can always go. There's always the ebb and flow of temptation, desire, whatever your kind of battle is, it's always there. Even with coming out, and I'll get to that later, but even with coming out, there are times where you can walk in the room as a queer person and choose not to come out. There are times where you can go in a room and be like, I could play it straight for a little bit. Like if I just don't want to deal with, whatever it is that you might deal with. Yeah. And it's a constant decision that you have to make to be like, no, my truth and my light deserves to shine here. I deserve to be free here. So I will say it's a decision that I constantly have to make. Things that made it easier for me was living in LA. I talk about in my book, it was the first time outside of like Texas and Indiana and all these places where I went to a place and just felt at ease. Like no one was really staring at me. You know, I wasn't an A-list celebrity, so no one really cared when I walked in. There's so many cool, unique, diverse people, doing so many cooler, more unique, diverse things than like what I was doing at the time. And that was a relief to realize that I just wanted to be like ignored when I walked in a room instead of being like the ominous big black guy in the space. Was a huge relief to me. Finding art also helped me. It was the first time in LA where I met other people who were doing creative things like writing, like poetry. And I did get deep into writing poetry and sharing at open mic nights, which was like a whole different can of nerves and butterflies and like craziness to coming out of the football tunnel and like playing a game, but also still like a weird adrenaline spike, but one that was now given to me through like vulnerability.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a whole different form of vulnerability.
No, I mean it's terrifying. You get up there and you bare your soul to strangers essentially, and you don't know what it's going to be like stepping off that stage. You don't know how people are going to receive what you're saying. You don't even know if people are going to get it, which did play a lot into my coming out story, because coming out is similar. You're being super vulnerable. You don't know what you're going to get. For me, and for a lot of us, you're telling strangers essentially, and you just don't know what that's going to be like. So that was a huge part of my journey. And then I have to give credit to the friends that I made in LA, the friends that I had that I slowly started to come out to and accept me. And of course, my partner then, now, Corey O'Brien, who's also been on the podcast.
Heck yeah.
We met each other.
One amazing story. Yep. Yeah,
we met, and I remember I pretty much, the story is, the short version is, we met, we connected on an app. I finally wrangled him to have a coffee date with me. And I just pretty much sat there for 2 hours and just like divulged everything. I was like, I'm bisexual, I'm closeted, I play in the NFL, which I hadn't told anybody about the football part because I didn't want that stigma to affect how I acted in those spaces. Not even them. I didn't want to then start acting like the quote unquote straight football player that I always kind of lived my life to be.
Yeah.
I told him, you know, he told me he was sober. I told him I was drinking. I was like, is that an issue? You know, because I didn't want to jeopardize anyone else's sobriety, but I also at that time had no inclination on stopping.
Right.
And just everything. I told him everything. And I remember he kind of just looked at me. He was like, okay, cool. So like, what do you like to do? Like, I'm glad like you dumped all this trauma on me, but like, what do you like to do? Like, have fun. Let's talk about the present or the future. And it was just such a relief that I could tell someone all those things. They could just be like, okay, cool. But like, what matters is how we use this moment together. What matters is how you treat me. And he had to remind me that, like, as we begin to know each other, because, you know, I had my own past traumas with relationship, with self. And he had to just tell me, like, I'm not those situations. Like, this is a new situation. I understand that. I see where that comes from. But let's focus on us and let's move forward. And that was the comfort that I never thought I would have with someone. That was comfort I'd never experienced in a relationship before. And there was a moment where that was tested. Corey and I had been seeing each other for 3 months at this time. 3 months at this time. I got a call to go try out for the San Francisco 49ers. I got really close to signing a deal, but due to kind of their roster and an injury shuffle, they weren't signing anyone that day. So I didn't end up signing, but I remember in that locker room after the coaches and everyone telling me how great I did, and they left for a moment to discuss, I remember being in the locker room being like, oh shit, I'm going to have to do this again. I'm going to have to sacrifice me again. And when I was younger, when I was 13, 14, 15, and I didn't have really idea of who I was or a huge self-identity at the time, it was easy to choose football because I didn't feel like I had much else. This time I had a life in LA. I had friends. I had art at the time, my writing. I had Corey, who I really saw a future with. And I also knew more about myself as a human being. And I valued those parts of myself that for a long time I didn't value.
Yeah.
And the decision was harder. The decision was impossible at that moment. And it's the first time I had ever been relieved to not get a an opportunity when it came to football.
Yeah.
For them to not sign me. And it really did feel like God or the higher power of the universe, or I don't know, my own strong conscious and manifestation didn't allow that to happen, so I could go back to LA and take care of what I had to take care of. So as soon as I got back, I was like, I want to come out. I was like, I just want it out there. So anytime I am in a situation, whether it's a team going to sign me or I'm just out living my life and holding my boyfriend's hand, there is no fear that comes with these things that should be positive things.
Right.
There's no fear or worry of having the big moment and feeling shrouded in secret and in shame, like I had all my career. And Corey was very supportive. He's still the most supportive person I know. And it changed the course of my life. It changed the course of our lives together.
Of course.
And hopefully for the better, it changed the course of a lot of young sports people's lives, because I want people to know that you can play the game you love and be who you are. And not only you can, but you deserve to, and that's your right. Your merit as an athlete has nothing to do with who you are outside of how hard you work, how dedicated you are, the talent that you have, and the commitment that you make to your team, to your sport, to your craft, and to those who support you.
That's good. Oh, that's a really, really, really important sentiment right there. What was the decision-making process like? Knowing that you're coming out, you got to have a plan. You knew this was going to be big because you knew that you were one of the firsts. In this specific way, you were the first.
Yeah.
Take us there.
I wouldn't call myself an impulsive person, but Corey and anyone in my life would say that once I make a decision, I make a decision. Like there are people who, will ask their friends, who will crowdsource, who will kind of get all the information and let people be a part of their decision. I am not that person. I make the decision. I execute the decision. And I let you, when I let you know something's happening, I'm letting you know it's happening. So coming out was very similar. The benefit in a part of maturing from being just that person who makes decisions, judge, jury, executioner, is telling people and then being like, yeah, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but maybe do it in a different way. So when I first came back, I was like, I'm just going to tweet. I was like, I just want it to be out there. I was like, I'm so over this. It's like once you make the decision, you can't come out fast enough. I was like, I should have did this yesterday. I was like, I should have did this years ago. So I was going to tweet, but then I was like, that's weird. No shade to anyone who's come out via tweet. Like I was just like, I thought about it. I was like, that's not really what I want. Because once you go to social media, you kind of open it up for like social commentary. Right. That's really what social media to me is.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think that's that moment. Corey and I at that time then filmed a video to release on YouTube. And that was going to be how I did it. So I could sit there and kind of explain at least a journey outside of like 140 characters. And we recorded the video. You can't find it now. It's not on the internet. We scrubbed it. But I recorded the video and I kind of had it and I was ready. But then I was like, that's still kind of social media. It's kind of the same thing. I told, I think, then one other person in the sports space. They then directed me to David McFarland, who's now my manager. But just someone who's well-connected, well-versed in the LGBTQ plus space, in the sports space, and then the mental health space, which were all things that I, especially at that time, was really affected by, was really into, really part of, still am now, just in different ways. And he was like, he kind of let me know, not just how big this would be, because I knew how big it would be in my life, but the moment that this could be in sport. The moment that this could be for any young R.K. Russell coming up feeling conflicted between who he is and the sport that he loves. And at first I was still very uncomfortable with it. I hadn't done a lot of things like this, like sitting down and interviewing and talking. But I had always loved to write. And it was something that I was getting even more comfortable and finding even more of my voice in at the time. He was like, you can write an essay. He was like, you can write a personal essay. You can say everything that you need to say in any form that you need to say it. And we could just start from there. And that felt right. That felt like my truest form of communication. That felt like where I had been comfortable very recently being vulnerable and being honest, regardless of how strangers or anyone felt or thought about it. So we started there. It then went to an ESPN writer who then took it to a journalist and then became this TV segment accompanied with it and this down interview. But at first, the truest form of my coming out is this letter that I get to write and also showcase, some of my other talents, some of my other abilities, whether that was the intention or not, that sparked other dreams and other possibilities for me, like this book. But the coming out process for me, I was so impatient. I was like, 27 years, too long. Let's do this. But I'm so glad that I took the time to really sit and and to tell my story outside of letting anyone guide me with questions, outside of letting anyone, tell me about myself or have this big social dialogue. And the social dialogue still happened. You can't stop society from talking. But I had said my piece and it wasn't in a back and forth. So it felt so very easy for me to then disengage from whatever the social conversation was. Because I'm like, I'm not going back in the closet. So whatever y'all discuss, please discuss.
Right. Oh my gosh. So this all happened. It blew up and it was a huge thing, right?
2019.
Yeah. How did that, I mean, like it snowballed, right? Like, I mean, it's still going. So many doors, like you said earlier, so many doors opened. You've been able to be used as an instrument and a tool, your story, your voice, your platform in so many outlets to affect positive change, bring education to people who, might not otherwise hear it unless they heard a firsthand story, So what led to the decision to write a book? Was that pretty quick after?
Oh my goodness. It was and it wasn't. I think the idea came very quickly. My agent, still agent to this day, Sarah Boland, saw my letter and witnessed, the talent in it and the gift in it and the desire also to write. Because I do say in my letter also that I am a writer, which, like I said, looking back at it, I was like, oh, you did good, bud. Even though you weren't thinking about it, you did good.
Yeah.
But she came to me first with the idea of writing a book. And I had always been interested in writing. At that time, I'd already had a poetry book out that was very much like a me project. And I always kind of felt like I would write a book, but I was dead sure it would never be about my life. Mm-hmm. Especially as like a closet athlete. I'm like, that's the last thing I need. And I was like, if I do write a book about my life, it'll be when I'm 80 or I'm old, I'm on my last leg. And I'm like, fuck it, I don't care what anyone thinks.
Right.
Not at like 27 at the time, telling that life. There's so many things that come into your mind. Like, am I worthy? Do I deserve? Is my story really one that needs to be told? Have I lived enough life for like a book? And the more I sat with her and the more I talked about it with her and David, the more I realized I'd lived so much of a life, the more that I was reminded of the impact that a letter that I wrote could have. Yeah. It's like if that coming out letter could be such a moment and create, like I said, this dialogue in sport about what it means to be an athlete, what it means to be a man, what it means to be bisexual. There's a lot of bi-erasure that we still suffer through today, and what it means to be all that, be a man of color and still live a life that you love, doing what you love. If there's a moment to have a longer discussion on that, why not take it? And it was also the fact that the coming out was such a huge moment, but there were so many things that led up to it that I didn't get to express. So many people that championed me that I didn't get to talk about. So many people that, didn't champion me, that was in opposition to me, that I didn't get to share the mental health aspect of it, the sobriety aspect of it. After coming out, several days after I came out, I think 2 days after September 1st, I stopped drinking. The idea was just to take a break. Corey was with me when I was like, I'm just gonna chill for a second. I was like, I just came out. There was a lot happening. Let me just reassess. Yeah. And, maybe I'll drink later in life. It's been 4 years now, going on 5 come this September. And it's a decision that has also helped change my life. and the ripple effect of it. I wanted other people to be able to see that and to read it and to have it and to call back to it if they need it, to feel seen by it, to go through my struggles so that they don't have to go through their own. And there was that side of it that felt very genuine and very true. There was also the side of it that kind of leads to more of the advocacy of, what if there's someone who won't meet someone like me? Mm-hmm. What if there's someone who is in a position to make decisions about Black lives, to make a decision about Black and brown people of color, to make a decision about LGBTQ plus people, bisexual people, to have dialogue with people in these huge social topics that become politicized,
right?
When it's really just about people living their lives and having the same freedoms and rights as everyone. What if they never meet someone like me? You know, what I even with the greatest platform, you can only reach so many people. This book was an opportunity to kind of extend an olive branch to people. I hope people pick it up that don't look like me, don't love like me, don't love football.
Yeah.
And they still see just the humanness in my journey. They still are able to put an experience with something that for them for a long time has been just a topic of discussion, or maybe a topic of taboo. Maybe no one's talking about it in your town. And you're given a real life experience that just really has a heartbeat. That isn't, I don't tell anyone how to think. I don't tell anyone what to believe. I recount my experiences, my relationships, my shortcomings. Mm-hmm. And I just tell it in a way that hopefully allows you to see me as human instead of allowing to see me as these labels. Books are a huge part of social consciousness that I've been talking about this whole time. Yeah. And I think they're a huge part of collective empathy. Mm-hmm. I think in our society today, there is a lack of empathy, which makes it hard for us to connect with each other as human beings.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
You know, we're desensitized by the instant gratification of social media, the then infantilization of harm or injury, whether it be to Black bodies, to bodies of color, to people, young people. And we're desensitized to each other. We see each other as just things on a phone screen instead of people sitting and talking and living and breathing. And I think books and stories and storytelling allow us to see each other again as human and to see the connecting humanity in us all.
Beautifully put. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the humanity of what you were just talking about, how the book, connects us all, and something that you mentioned in conjunction with your sobriety journey, mental health. What we didn't really get into that yet. So we talked about a lot of your life and definitely trauma, but how has mental health played a role? What's that thread that's been woven through your story?
Mental health is a huge part of not just my story, but who I am today. Mm-hmm. It's a part of my platform moving forward. And I think it's a way that we can really help a lot of people, whether you are someone who feels marginalized, displaced, silenced, or whether you are someone who just doesn't feel like you've been given the tools to properly deal with the many ever-changing, growing, crazy, for lack of better words, things that happen in our society. And I also have to credit LA a little bit because there is this, and I'll jab a little fun as well. There's kind of the stigma of LA that like everyone has a therapist. Like, oh, I want to go talk to my therapist. It's like going to get a juice almost. Right. It's like going to see your therapist. You do a soul cycle, you get a green juice, you do a therapy session, and then you live your life. So it was the normalization though of therapy that really sunk in for me. And, you know, I was like, I'm a young person of color who's lived a lot of life, been through a lot, also a bisexual man, just came out, dealing with societal pressure. I'm like, therapy sounds like a place made for me. It sounds like a place I need to go. Like I said, at the time, I wasn't drinking, but I also didn't make the decision to not drink. So it was still very up in the air. And I had lived a lot of life that I needed to unpack. And therapy felt like the only place really equipped to do that. It's great to have people in your life that you talk to. I also am a huge advocate for having people in your life that you can have serious, honest, vulnerable conversation with. But there are also times where you need to have that conversation about those people, and they might not be the best person to hear it first.
That's
you might
right.
want to talk to a professional and really unpack the best way also to communicate that with someone. So that was a huge part for me as well. I can say that I've been in therapy for 4 years now, going on 4 years. I started out going weekly. I've now go twice a month. I might continue to taper off or take breaks, but it's something that allowed me to unpack a lot of the trauma that I had, realize where a lot of my kind of decision making was coming from, a lot of the triggers, a lot of decisions being informed by my past trauma and by my past selves and my young self.
Meaning decisions you were making in present time.
Yes.
Being informed by, gotcha.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it really, I mean, as an athlete, once I kind of snapped it into like, I train my body to be great at my profession. You don't go to the gym one time and expect to bench 500 pounds and squat 300 pounds and be a great football player. It's something that becomes a constant routine.
Yeah.
And something that becomes a part of your performance as an athlete. And I looked at mental health kind of in similar ways. Like I can't just go to one therapy session. Like that's not going to do anything for me. I have to create a routine. I have to really, for lack of better words, train my mental health to deal with things like depression, to deal with anxiety, to deal with trauma, to deal with, I mean, on the lighter notes, to be a better partner, to be a better friend, to be a better just human in this society that we all share, to understand people and myself better. So once I looked at it as like that, like I said, therapy, the talk of therapy was normalized. I kind of set it up as like, this is something, a routine that I want to maintain for myself. It then led to some of the greater decisions in my life. It helped me to write this book. It helped me to stay sober, to actually make a decision to be sober. It helped me to realize how society viewed me and how I didn't have to show up in that way, how I could define my life for me. I'm a huge advocate for it. I think that everyone should go to therapy just the same way that I think that everyone should find some type of exercise or some type of physical activity that works for them. It's a part of our overall health as human beings. And even if it's not therapy, a mental wellness routine, I think, is important, whatever that looks like for you. A lot of the times we're just been focused to make money and to provide and to be like these efficient human beings. But I think that focus can be spent on just making sure that we're living life to the fullest, that we're taking care of ourselves in these beautiful vessels that we've all been given. And that starts with mental health, that then goes to physical health, that then goes to relational health, all of these different aspects. There's so much more than just being able to, hold a job and like be a contributing member to capitalism.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, to add to that, one of the beautiful things is that like, as we seek these forms of elevating and moving to be a better person internally, externally, and what have you, you mentioned something. So I think important is that then it goes relationally, and we're not only healing ourselves, we're healing generations, because we're helping to heal the generations that are coming after us and the ones that came before, because there's a ripple effect that we'll never know. We'll never know where that ripple ends.
Oh my God. Yes, you said it so beautifully. We're given general information about how to make money, our place in society, how to vote, all of these things that, are needed as well. But we're not taught, especially as young people, generational trauma. We're not taught really like family dynamics in ways that aren't just like, 2 kids, a dog, and a white picket fence. We're not really taught about the connections and the weaves through generations, through our societies, through our own family dynamics. Take that a step further, we're definitely not taught about relationships. We're not taught about what it means to be a partner to someone, what it means to be a lover, to be a husband, to be a wife, to be just in any real type of meaningful, foundational relationship with a different person. Media shows us, love stories, happy endings. We're taught a lot about sex. We're taught not even a lot. We're taught very minimal about sex. And even then, it's a very specific type of sex between 2 very specific type of people and bodies. But we're not taught what love looks like. We're not taught how to love. We're assumed to be able to do it. We're assumed to, at a certain age, you should kind of have this relationship down, even though you haven't been taught anything about them. We're also assuming that a lot of people have seen a relationship in their household, which most people haven't. And it's also like, you know, if I'm an adult, I'm not telling my kid maybe everything about my relationship.
Sure.
That makes sense. But yeah, we're very under-equipped.
I agree.
To handle so much about adult life. And I think mental wellness is a huge part of that, starting to accumulate those tools in your toolbox. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I understand me better so that I can understand you better, so that I can be there for you in ways that not only truly help you, but are genuine to me and also don't feel like they're draining from me. So, I mean, mental wellness is a huge aspect. I'm so glad that it's becoming a topic of conversation more. We still see so many disparities between LGBTQ plus people in mental health, between men in mental health, trans people in mental health. So, you know, it's a very real topic that we need to continue to push to the forefront. And it's also resources that we need to make readily available.
That's right.
For all people, but especially those who need it the most.
Absolutely. You hit so many great points in that umbrella of mental health. I really appreciate that. And I love to hear that you're still continuing your journey. A lot of people start and do a little bit and then they stop. And I know it's something, I don't know, I think I'm going to keep going as long as I have to keep getting haircuts. And so, you know, it's a good thing. So your book, I loved it. The Yards Between Us, so good. And I'm an audiobook person. You read it yourself, which would, not everybody does a great job when they read their own book. You did an amazing job in my opinion. So it was quite enjoyable to listen to. The content's really great. I would encourage anybody to go pick up the hardback if you like to read, or the audiobook is really great too. I really, really appreciated it. And I know it's probably already changed a lot of people's lives and is going to continue to. So
thank you. That
absolutely. Yeah. Can you tell us anything about what is coming up for you?
Yes. My book, The Yards Between Us, was optioned by Sony Pictures and in collaboration with Gabrielle Union and her production company. I'll have another. It will be turned into a TV series in the near future. I've been given the opportunity and the honor to co-executive produce with Gabrielle Union and Saeed Crumpler, who also I'm co-writing with. And it's just another form of sharing those experiences with people, to take this story to another format, another medium. Because at essence, this started out as a coming out letter, has now become a book, which will now become a TV series. And the genius part about this, and it wasn't my idea, this was Gabrielle Union's idea, she brought this to me, is to make the TV format a comedy. And you read my book. Anyone that's read my book knows, like, it doesn't scream comedy,
right?
which is the genius of it, because it is taking so many topics that for a lot of people come up in arguments or in social discourse or in these kind of like very polarizing odds, and taking that out of it, taking the sides out of it, and just showing an experience of a family and a guy living life as a bisexual Black man, playing football and having fun and making mistakes and being human and falling in love and getting his heart broken and, you know, catching the game winning touchdown and dropping the touchdown that matters, and like having all of these moments, and to, be able to talk about things, to discuss things, but at the heart of it, to be able to laugh and just enjoy life. I, as well as the team behind this, we are not interested in telling the traumatic coming out story. There's a place for that. That is necessary. That is a lot of our realities. But there's also the other side of that. We are interested in telling the joyous post coming out story.
Yeah.
The messy post coming out story. The you don't have to be perfect, you can just be human coming out story. Because for a lot of people, that's what went into making the book as well. For a lot of people, coming out is kind of positioned as the end. The movie, you know, the guy's going through all this hardship and the family doesn't understand and he's trying to find love. And then he comes out and he's happy and then it's over. And I came out and I thought that would be my life. I was like, oh, I came out, I did it. I've done it. Like, it's done. But for me, that's really where the work began. That's where I found sobriety. That's where I found mental wellness. That's where I started really working on building a long-lasting relationship with my partner, with family, with friends, starting this whole life. So I think it's important to show that to people. I think it's important for us to also just sit down and see ourselves having fun on screen, enjoying a life on screen. And that is what this project not just hopes to be, but is at the heart of it. And I'm super excited about it.
Me too. I'm pumped. I can't wait to watch it when it comes out and hear the progress as it's in development.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Last question. For that person or individual people, group of people that have really just really identified with your story, what last word of encouragement would you like to leave with them before we close?
Last words of encouragement. I want anybody who feels in any way othered, in any way silenced, in any way like their light has been dimmed by whatever force that may be, to understand that you deserve to live a life of love, a life of joy, of connectedness, of freedom, a life where your light is not just able to shine its brightest, but is encouraged to shine brighter, is ignited by those around you, is celebrated by those who you're in relation with, and that to know you is to have an honor of knowing a full human person and to feel connected to that. Mm-hmm. I would encourage them to prioritize themselves. I would encourage them to love themselves in radical and unimaginable and sometimes absurd ways, because you deserve it. And to know that, you know, to fight the good fight is great, but it's also okay to rest and to love yourself and to heal and to recover. And that sometimes when things are too much, it's okay to take a step back. And I just want anyone to know that they're not alone, that moments like these and conversations like these are so important because people need to hear our stories and realize there are so many of us that feel this way. There are so many people also that want to know that we feel this way and want to know how they can help, how they can support and be there for you. I spent a lot of my life trying to find the perfect time to come out. And I realized that there is no perfect time to come out. There's only time that I waste living a lie, time that I enjoy and appreciate living my truth. And I want other people to get to that decision for themselves as soon as possible, because life is not promised to us. And it is a beautiful thing when you live it as your full self.
That was about a 2-minute and 50-second soundbite that is worth it's gold right there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, R.K. Russell. This has been such a treat, pleasure, honor. I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Thank you. The pleasure's mine. It's been a good time.
Yes, sir.
I gotta come back to Nashville.
Absolutely. Bring Corey next time.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, with that, I'm going to remind each and every one of you that it's never too late to start loving yourself, and you're always only ever one decision away from a completely different life.
This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admission center at 888-648-4098. Or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.